Back into another NBA DFS video. Have you guys covered here with the Sunday slate? It's going to be a 7-game slate, so a decent sized slate. We got a decent amount of news as well. A lot of players that are listed out, but we did just get news that Goga is going to start. So let's go ahead and kind of touch on that. So, what are your initial thoughts with that news?
Yeah, man. Definitely changes the slate. Obviously, Goga, pretty good fantasy producer. So at 3K, probably going to be pretty tough to avoid him there. What do you think about Goga, though?
I mean, yeah, we'll see what once the data updates a little bit more, but he's already coming in as like a very good value play. We can see he's clearly mispriced compared to FanDuel pricing as well. So the question is, how many minutes will he get? Is he going to stay at this like 13 minutes or so? If it does, that might be a little bit too thin, but I would imagine that is something that does get updated. But we'll see. You know, it's definitely something we'll check back in, and hopefully obviously the data updates a little bit more. But it's weird, like, what are your thoughts on Carter then, because he's starting at the 4?
Yeah, so I think Carter probably takes a little bit of a downgrade here. In terms of like rebounding, probably at the 4. We like him a lot better at the 5. So I think I prefer Goga between the two, but in tournaments, I don't hate Wendell as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're starting Anthony Black today, Jalen Suggs, Wagner as well. So, you know, I don't mind Wagner. I feel like he's going to be a play that we can get to a decent amount. His pricing does feel, probably correct on both sides, but at the same time, a little bit of a pace up spot against Atlanta. I would have thought the field would be a little bit higher on him given that news. Jonathan Isaac's going to be chalk on FanDuel. He's a decent play as well. I'm kind of fine with him, but is there anyone else here that's sticking out to you that you feel is like a must play, or they're just all kind of, if you end up on them, you end up on them?
I really like France today or Franz. I know the field isn't too heavy on him, but without Banchero, I think his price tag's pretty good here in a really good spot. So I do like Franz a lot here. Um, in
I think that's
tournaments.
fair. And then yeah, yeah, I think that's fair. Let's go ahead and touch on the other side of this game. So we do know that Trey Young is going to be out, and Nika is also still out. So with that, are we just loading up on DeJounte Murray like the field is doing? Bogdanovich, he's kind of been a letdown recently, but at the same time, he's a little bit too cheap on both sides. We got Bay and Jalen Johnson, both prices that are a little bit too cheap as well. But what are your initial thoughts there as well?
Yeah, man. Looks like DeJounte, arguably the top play of the night. Potentially after some of these other guys we'll get into. But I really like him. And then Bogdanovich, I love him, especially when Trey Young's out. So love those two in particular.
Yeah, it's just he's been Bogdanovich. He's been so hit or miss, it seems like recently with that. So I don't know. I'm definitely gonna be playing him, but at the same time, it's like I need him to come through this time. So the trust issues are really gonna be there.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Other injury news items that we are waiting on. We can talk about the Pelicans as well. So we already got news that Alvarado's going to be out, CJ McCollum's out, Daniels is out, Najee Marshall is still out, but Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson are both a game time decision. So looking at right now, we have both those two projected to get minutes. Ownership is kind of spread out. Everyone's kind of like in a piece here. Is there anyone that you like more than the other?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I thought Hawkins would be really chalk today. No CJ and no Dyson Daniels. And then
Mhm.
obviously Alvarado got suspended. They have no point guards, so I thought Hawkins would be very, very chalky. But if he's not going to be, I love him here in tournaments. He'd arguably be my favorite play from New Orleans. And then if Zion and Ingram, kind of depends on who plays there, but they would look really good as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think Ingram and Zion are both a little bit too cheap today, assuming that they play. Going against the Bulls, I'm not too worried about that matchup. Like that's where I went to initially, but at the same time, Herbert Jones probably a fine play as well. To your point, Jordan Harkins does feel too cheap and a little bit of a sticker shock there with the projected ownership as well.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me, right? Like they have no other point guards on the roster, so like someone's got to play point. Could be Ingram, I guess, but kind of interesting to see what they do there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Zion too, just let him handle the ball a little bit more in this game. It's definitely a weird spot for sure that's going on there. Um, there's not too much news for Charlotte, but I kind of want to touch on it as well. Just Bertan's looking like he's going to sit. We know Ball's out. Seth Curry's going to be out though as well. And we still got news that Mark Williams is out. And then we can touch on the other side of this game as well because a lot of Portland players are going to be out. But looking at Charlotte, Trey Madden's been someone that DFS wise people have liked. I'm not going to butcher the Miacek. Is that I don't. Is that? Do you know how to say it?
Yeah, Michek. I'm not even trying to say it either. Let's go with Michek.
Yeah, he's yeah, he's looking like a decent value play as well potentially tonight with Seth Curry out. But is there anyone here that's drawing your attention?
Um, Not really anyone particular. I guess yeah, like Man and Michech, the top guys with no Seth Curry, but I don't know if anyone's really a must play for me on Charlotte here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just a still kind of different lineup that they've been putting out there since the trade deadline. So, thought we would touch on it. And then Portland as well, a little bit banged up. Scoot's still out. Sharp is still out. Malcolm Brogdon is still out. Simons is pulling in a lot of ownership. Grant seems like a decent play. DeAndre Ayton, seems like a good GPP play, especially against Charlotte, specifically on DraftKings. But is there anyone here that you really like? We got Grant. Simons projected to get 36 minutes. Then, everyone, I don't know, to me, everyone here for Portland, I could make a case for, I feel like. But what are your thoughts for Portland today?
Yeah, so up top, obviously Simons is going to grade out as the best play here for Portland. But a couple of guys as value I wanted to highlight here: Chris Murray and actually Delano Banton. So without Scoot, both these guys have benefited. Murray started last game, I think, put up around 35 DraftKings points, which is insane for his point per dollar.
Yeah.
And then Banton's actually been really good for them off the bench. So I think both those guys are fine contrarian value plays as well.
Yeah, and the thing with those two is that they have been playing obviously a little bit more minutes recently, and the pricing hasn't really come up. And this slate, the size of it, I don't know if we exactly need to load up on too many of those value plays, but it's nice to know that they are out there. Like we have a lot of logical sub 4K plays that we could end up on, including those two that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and like Hendricks is going to pull the chalk, so I definitely like pivoting to some of these contrarian low on value guys.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump on and get into some questions here. So the chat's popping off, which is awesome. Love to see that.
Love to see.
Yeah. So do we risk the 3K Goga? So yeah, that's gonna be the theme of the video I think today. I'm just gonna go ahead and refresh the data. This is obviously a little bit later of a question. We kind of already answered it, but um, it's. I mean, that's the spot. That's the spot today. So let's see. Yeah, he's popping up much more value wise and becoming chalk. So yeah, he seems like a must play. But we still only have him projected to get 17 minutes. So I don't know. What would you do? Like if he only gets 17 minutes at 3K, is he someone you need to be playing?
I just feel like he's so cheap, man. Like even if he gets like 15 to 20, 3K flat, like I could still see him being opti, even if he plays that low minutes. So really tough for me to avoid. I know
Yeah.
he could bust, but it's really tough at 3K.
And then we did get a question a while ago about Mo Wagner. He is not starting, but and then we got B Mac who answered that as well. But I actually want to get your thoughts on Mo Wagner because he's coming in not owned at all. He's 4.3 on DraftKings, projected to get 20 minutes tonight. And to me, like that's more than enough. Like he is someone that is a point per minute producer. And if he's not getting any ownership, I could talk myself into it. But I don't know. Is that just dumb or like
No, I like it in tournaments. If you're not getting to Goga, I think getting to one of Carter or Mo Wagner makes a ton of sense. I like that whole lot.
And that's the way I'd begin there is if I'm fading like Goga. But maybe they both could coexist, but I don't think we need to do that too much. And
Yeah,
then we had the chat kind of picking up Emma a little bit here for like Jordan Hawkins. Everyone's kind of saying it, but let's just retouch on Jordan Hawkins again because we got a couple of people kind of asking about it. So you mentioned he's one of your kind of favorites lower owned plays because he shouldn't be that low owned, but yeah, just rehash that.
yeah, just like they have no guards. Hawkins is a pretty good fantasy producer. In games like this where these guys have been out, he's been very, very, very good in terms of fantasy. So I love him here at 4,200 in tournaments. Honestly, in cash, it was probably not. You probably don't want to play him in cash, but in tournaments, he's a great play. Yes, I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a path to ending up on him at 4.2 for cash. Like, I'd be fine with
Yeah,
it if the minutes we have him projected for 27 and maybe one of Ingram or Zion said like that, he just becomes a much better play.
yeah, agreed.
Mhm. All right, so let's see this one. We got one more. So, is Brandon Miller due? I would say yes, but what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple bad games. I don't know if he's due, but I think a good game's probably coming soon.
Yeah.
I don't hate him in tournaments. A really good matchup, so I don't hate him.
That's the thing. I kind of want to chase the matchup and the price decrease that he's seen. Like he could give GPP winning upside. I don't think anyone would be shocked by that.
Yeah, definitely.
But with that, let's go ahead and kind of get into the position breakdown here. We're going to start out with the guards. Again, if you guys have any questions, make sure to get those in. Happy to answer those. But yeah, jumping into the guards here. Uh, Let me just pull that up. So we know Simons, Hawkins. We kind of already mentioned those plays are going to be the plays we want to go to. Let me just get to the DK main as well. SGA is being pulled in as the best play. Then De'Aaron Fox, who's really cheap, relatively speaking. James Harden, another one that's kind of relatively cheap. DeJounte Murray, he's the one that's pulling in all the ownership. Paul George, kind of listed as a guard on both sides. It feels like we have a lot of quality kind of, I don't want, they're kind of more mid range, but slight mid range pay ups like with Fox, Murray, Paul George, Simons. Is there anyone that you feel most comfortable about?
It's tough. I feel like Fox in that mid to expensive range, probably my favorite guy. He just seems a little bit too cheap for his upside.
Yeah.
He's kind of been hovering around this 8K range, man. I think he's too cheap. So he's probably my favorite. How about you though?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I I like Simons a little bit more, and I like DeJounte Murray a little bit more. I just feel like they're a little bit cheaper, and I feel like they're a little bit safer. But Murray going against Orlando, not exactly the best matchup. Um, but like the model likes Fox a little bit better, so I should probably say Fox, and that's more likely going to be correct. But uh, it feels like there's no correct answer there, honestly, between those three, given the price.
Yeah, I mean they're all great plays. Murray probably your cash play. The other two great tournament plays here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there. Let's see here. So Jamal Murray is another one that's kind of pulling in as a good play. Trey Murphy is a play we didn't mention. Getting some ownership, 17 and 18% ownership. He feels like a good kind of cash play in DraftKings because he's guard and small forward eligible at a cheap price. Is he someone you've been getting to tonight?
Who'd you say again? Sorry, I'm looking at
Yeah.
the list.
Trey Murphy.
Oh yeah, so Murphy, if he is playing guard tonight, if they put him at the one, I think he's a whole different player. So I would kind of monitor the starting lineup right now. If he's just playing the three, I probably will like him less. But if he plays the one, I think that would be very intriguing in tournaments.
And then we got to talk about the chalk guy today, Keontae George. Okay, so Keontae George is pulling in 33% projected ownership, 22 on FanDuel, projected to get 32 minutes. DK value wise, he is going to be one of the best plays as well. FanDuel, not as much, but still pretty darn good as well. Is he someone you've been eating the chalk on as well? Because right now it's just looking like guard wise, there's a lot of chalk that we should eat because it's going to be good chalk. But what is your kind of thoughts on Keontae George specifically?
Yeah, man. I think he's a really good player. 5,300. Obviously, we have a ton of great guard plays, but against San Antonio, as long as he keeps starting and playing, decent minutes, I do like him here. So yeah, definitely like Keontae.
Yeah. So my initial builds, the problem was having like too much value that we could get to, and it's like making the build process difficult. I don't know. Have you had that trouble?
Yeah, it seems like especially with guards, we have a ton of like cheap to lower range guards that we could consider.
Mhm.
It almost seems like it's hard to decipher which one we really want to play. Obviously, Murray will be the number one guy, but after that, it's really tough.
And this for me is without the Goga news prior to that, so it's just like toss that in there now. It's yeah, fun slate.
I think we'll
But
get
yeah,
into Jokic up top in the centers, but when we get there, I think he's way too underowned tonight in tournaments. But we'll
yeah,
get into that later.
yeah. And just going back to the ownership here, we got the two Atlanta guys pulling in as chalk. Keontae George chalk, Simon's pretty chalky. Then Colin Sexton seems decent. Devin Vassell seems pretty good. Like I feel like the field is pretty much spot on with all the ownerships. Maybe besides to your point, Jordan Hawkins, that feels a little bit too low. And maybe I could make a case where I could be on Trey Man a little bit more. But I don't. Do you see any like ownerships that seem wrong or stick out to you?
Yeah, besides Hawkins, like nothing really too much. Yeah, definitely have some interest, like you mentioned, James Harden and George in tournaments.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, after that, man, like I guess, yeah, Trey Man, you mentioned him. He's in a great spot. He had a bunch of assists last game that he should have converted on. So I think he's in a good bounce back spot as well. So yeah, I like those calls a lot.
then we actually just got a question about that. So if Paul George is out, Harden or Kawhi, like both, right? Or
Yeah, 100%. I love both. Let's see what are their prices. I probably
yeah.
would come down to who's cheaper for me, but I think they're both would be great plays.
So pulling it up right now, they're both coming in basically the exact same for the OF index. Pricing wise, James Harden and Kawhi Leonard are the exact same price. So,
Oh, perfect. Playing
right.
both.
Yeah, and I could personally get to a little bit of Westbrook then as well. Maybe potentially Terrence Mann. He feels a little bit too cheap if Paul George is out, but I don't know if we need to exactly go there. But I could, you could end up on those two. That's I shoulder shrug. I'd be fine ending up on them.
Yeah, and then I think also Norman Powell, Paul George's backup is also questionable. So both those guys sit, then like Amir Coffey, I think he's close to mid price. He would be a great play too.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. Then that's just too much value.
Too much value.
And then we got to pull up this comment. That's pretty awesome. So Brand Smalls here says he won over 1K the past couple of weeks using because of us and the the Occupy model, which is freaking awesome. We'd love to see that. So shout out to you. Love to see it.
Love to see it. Hey, congrats, man. Keep up the
Yeah,
goal.
that is awesome. And it's weird. Like, I don't know, lately I've been like missing out on like good lineup pass, like by like one small
Mhm.
pivot. So I'd love to see people being able to take advantage of it and having, awesome success.
Yeah, model is so clutch, especially like later in the night when news updates. I always check the model first thing. So
Well,
congratulations.
like little news breaks, and you're like, it's late. I just need a quick answer. I don't, like that's the best, my best application of it too, as well.
Yeah, 100%.
But with that, let's go ahead and jump on into the forwards here. So getting back into the position breakdown, we already mentioned a couple of the forwards where we could double dip a little bit. Murphy being one of them. Maybe Paul George if he's active. We got to see about that. But in terms of the players that are popping up the best for the OF index, Wemby is popping up in there, Marketing, Kawhi, Paul George. I don't know. I like Jalen Johnson, but again, it feels like DraftKings did a great job and the field is kind of agreeing with the pricing. But where are you at?
Yeah, man. Wemby's been phenomenal, man. Up top, like the past 2 games, didn't he have like multiple games over like 10 blocks and steals combined? That's just
Yeah,
insane. He's
yeah,
incredible, man. It's 9,600. Like we don't love playing a 9,600 player that plays sub 30 minutes, but he's just been incredible, man. So I think he looks awesome up top. So love Wemby. And then you mentioned it, Kawhi and Paul George. If George plays, I think he's fine. I think Kawhi would look phenomenal if George sat. So
yeah.
those are some of the guys I was looking at.
And then I'm a little bit surprised that Wagner isn't pulling in more ownership. He just feels like a safe play against Atlanta. Now, um, maybe the initial thought was that this game could be a blow up, but Trey Young is out, and a lot of people are playing Bogdanovich. A lot of people are playing Dejounte Murray. Um, Maybe that's why Jalen Johnson isn't getting the ownership that I think he should be. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think Jalen, great tournament play. He's priced probably correctly now at 8K in terms of like where he should be priced at, but I think he's still fine in tournaments. No Trey Young, so he should get more shots up here.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a matchup thing, I would guess too.
Yeah,
But um, let's see here. So Vucevic, I just realized, power forward eligible. That's interesting
yeah,
move.
that's
But
insane. I guess he's technically at the 4 now, right? Because Drummond starts at the 5, or he has started, so that makes sense.
yeah, it's just I don't know. I like when they're a little bit slower to respond to that stuff, honestly, or it
Yeah.
stays the same throughout the season. But yeah, looking at the ownership here, Taylor Hendricks, you kind of teased him earlier. Let's get into him as a play. So 29% projected ownership, 45 on FanDuel, projected to get 26 minutes. Just feels too cheap, but what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so earlier on in the day, I really liked him, but now that more values opened up, I don't know if he's got like an insane ceiling. He's 4K, almost 4K, so he needs 20 plus.
Mhm.
I think he's still fine. I just don't know if I'm going to be jamming him when we have all these other low on value pieces.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we get more news, maybe more Pelicans out or, obviously Paul George, if that ownership on him shifts down more.
Yeah,
Do you
hope.
know? Do you remember seeing his ownership at the start of the day? I'm curious if the Goga news shifted it.
It was like almost 40% this morning. I think it might have came down just a little bit, but it's still pretty high compared to what
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah. And then it's not as like the ownership's kind of spread out pretty much after that marketing gained some ownership going against the Spurs. It seems like people are actively trying to stack that game just due to the ownership right now. Sohan is 18% projected ownership, which is pretty crazy. Then you got John Collins at 16% on DraftKings. And then we got Trey Murphy, who we already mentioned. What do you feel about that game there with Utah and San Antonio? Because I'm just going to filter by those two teams. It seems like a lot of people are trying to get to that game. Is that a potential for game stacking?
I think so, man. Two really bad defensive teams here. I really don't see anyone that can stop Wemby. And then Sochan, I think it's more of just like his price. You know, he's 6.4K on
Yeah,
FanDuel. It's a pretty good price. So I like him as well. So yeah, I think it's just a great game environment just in general.
yeah, I agree. Um, it's just I feel like looking at the ownership, it feels like everyone's trying to pull at least one or two forwards from this game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like I'm fine with Wemby. I like Hendricks, but getting like more than that, maybe. I mean, I could go Markkinen, Hendricks. Like I don't know, just going more than three feels weird.
Yeah, I agree. Especially like we have a ton of other good games as well. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Let's see here. So let's just sort it by value as well. So the best value, Trey Murphy. Again, we already mentioned that, but Keegan Murray is popping up in there as well, not pulling in any ownership. And if you like compare him to Trey Murphy, who kind of chalkier, is he a potential GPP upside play, or like we got Jeremy Sohan there as well, like pricing wise? I don't know. Is he a potential pivot for you at all, or is that just GPP only type play?
Yeah, I'd probably say GPP only. I don't know. I just really want to see how Murphy, if he's obviously he's going to start, but if he gets, the point guard role,
Yeah,
I'd just like him more. But kind of going to depend on Murphy there to really decide for this. So.
yeah, I gotcha. Um, and then I do find the ownership discrepancy between Jonathan Isaac on FanDuel and DraftKings just interesting because he's a little bit higher priced on FanDuel as he probably should be. Center eligible on DraftKings, maybe that's part of it, but 2% and 11% on FanDuel. Like I don't know, is he someone you were getting to at all? And I guess I don't really get the difference there. It seems random.
Yeah. So with Isaac, I was talking to this, with Chuck yesterday on the last stream. His minutes, like if we don't get north of 20 minutes with him, we need the upside of 20 plus, and I just don't think we're going to get it here. So on this slate, I'm going to be underweight. So I think he's still fine. He's in a good spot, but it's just a minutes things, man, with Isaac here.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get back into some questions here, and then we'll jump on into the center play. So we got the daily Yahoo question here. Let's just see. We'll sort it for you here. Best Yahoo value. Let's see. There you go. Trey Murphy. So no real big difference there. So seems
Model
easy
loves
enough.
Trey Murphy tonight.
It
Maybe
does.
I need to play Trey Murphy now.
Right? Honestly, no. I don't. I like for DraftKings. It makes a ton of sense just with the multiple position eligibility. It's just very flexible to make them work, but at the same time, that's kind of a weird price tag. Like I haven't needed to end up on it too much, and so that goes back to my point earlier. It's like lineup paths have been weird today. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
We got this question, so here we go. Murray, is that the same
Chris,
Murray? Keegan?
I think Chris Murray, right, for Portland.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
let's see. 4.8 on FanDuel. Yeah, Chris Murray. Yeah. So you kind of mentioned him earlier a little bit. We kind of mentioned this with Portland as well. Like they're all decent plays, but do you have any thoughts on Chris Murray specifically?
yeah, I prefer him on DraftKings, but this is a FanDuel question. I think he's fine at 48. Definitely like the price better on DraftKings, but at 48, he's still fine. I think I'd probably look to other spots though, and like one lineup. So
Yeah. I mean, we have him projected to get 30 minutes, which would be his most like I think of the season. I think that's correct.
yeah, yeah,
Besides the last game. So yeah, I mean, looking at it too, like DraftKings value wise, FanDuel value wise, that's a pretty big drop off as well. So it'd almost be try to look elsewhere. I don't think. Would you talk him off of that play though, or
I mean, if it was the last piece in, I'm fine with it, but I wouldn't like go out of my way to jam him on FanDuel.
no? Yeah. So here we go. We kind of talked about this earlier as well, but thoughts on Norman Powell with PG potentially sitting?
Yeah, I think he'd be fine. Again, he's priced probably in about what he should be, so I think he's fine. What do you think though?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would rather get to probably Westbrook and probably Man a little bit more. Just Westbrook has that GPP upside. Powell does too. Don't get me wrong, but Man a little bit cheaper. I don't think there's a wrong answer there. Um, they're probably all pretty safe, but really the top plays would obviously be getting to Kawhi and getting to Harden.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm actually curious. We got asked about Paul George a decent amount. Just refresh my injury news on him. Still truly a game time decision. So we'll see.
I'm trying to look. Is it a front leg of the back of a back to back for them? Because if it is, then I could see them potentially resting him here. Let me look
Just
at
take a quick peek.
it.
And then we also got a question about Vucevic as well. So we can talk about that. That's good timing. So they played on the 22nd. So the front end of back to back.
Yeah, I don't
Let's
think
see.
they are. So okay, so they're not. So I think it's probably a true 50-50 if he plays.
Oh, yeah. So we got a question about how many minutes is Vucevic projected to get today. We'll just pull that up as well. 35, 36. So
Seems
not
about
bad.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we got Brand saying feels like a mid range type of night.
I agree.
Yeah. And
I
then
think
paying it for Jokic.
yeah, I think Jokic is the only true spend up. And if you consider Wemby a spend up, I think Wemby and Jokic probably the two true spend ups here.
And the nice thing about Wemby on DraftKings and FanDuel is you can play both of them together. And really, with the pricing and the value that we have, like you can still make it work. Like,
Yeah,
so it makes a
100%.
lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
The, I mean, and you could still theoretically fit Goga in there, which is something Oscar's asking here, and maybe that's the sample build we try. Honestly,
Yeah,
like Jokic. I mean, obviously we'll get into centers here in just a second, but there's enough value where you can make that work.
definitely.
All right. Yeah, and then, so yeah, here's another question here, but first we got to pull up Unicorn Loves comment. Yeah, no problem, man. Appreciate the questions. Honestly, the questions help the videos, uh, pacing wise, and just we like helping you guys out, anyways. But yeah, thoughts on Mo Wagner coming off the bench. So I think he's a good GPP play off of Goga. That's going to be extreme chalk, but obviously don't go too crazy with that. We only have him projected to get 20 minutes, but like, do you think one is he going to play more than Isaac, or is that just a toss up? And then I guess who do you prefer? Like, who's going to score the most points for the Orlando Bigs? Is it going to be not Wagner, not Carter, but between Goga, Isaac, and then also Mo Wagner there?
Ooh, I'd probably in terms of like raw fantasy points, I think Wagner probably still has them like outscored most of the times. But I
Yeah,
think in terms of point per dollar, I'd probably go Goga, Wagner, then Isaac in that
yeah.
order.
I'm actually just going to refresh this as well, just to see if we have more minutes projected for Goga, because 17, it's not a lot, but let's see.
Yeah.
So still at 17, I mean, that's doesn't make you feel comfortable.
No, it's definitely not comfortable, but 3K, like we need
Yeah.
15,
Yeah,
around
exactly.
15 to 20. So
Yeah. And that's a thing that Orlando has done though. They have not given their roster a lot of minutes. It's been very well, they have. I guess it's been very spread out the minutes, and that's the annoying part of Orlando besides Vincero and Wagner, Franz Wagner. But that's been the headache this season.
yeah, agreed.
So let's go ahead and jump on into the last part of this here, and then we'll jump into some more questions here. So breaking down the center plays that we have. So we just mentioned Goga. We just mentioned, potentially pivoting to Mo Wagner. And then we kind of mentioned a little bit Jokic, but let's talk about Jokic as a pay up. So he's going against Golden State, coming in as the best play on the board, not 12K on DraftKings, right at 12K on FanDuel, not pulling in any show ownership. What are your thoughts on Jokic?
Yeah, man. So we just got news that Jamal, literally just now, that Jamal and KCP are both in for Denver. So Jokic, I wouldn't say he's like a must now with those guys in, but
Yeah.
11.6K, you need a true spend up. I do like him so in this matchup a lot.
Yeah, it's still a great matchup. And I don't know, like we've seen him have a lackluster stretch in there, but for the most part, it doesn't Like I don't think that moves the needle too much. Murray and KCP being active.
Yeah, he's still in a great spot, and at 6%, I'll definitely be happy getting over it on that. So
Yeah, and let's just actually sort it by ownership right now. So Goga chalk right now, Wemby chalk, John Collins, who we already kind of mentioned, 17%, but it's very top heavy. Goga, Wemby. In terms of other plays that are popping up, I kind of like DeAndre Ayton as a potential leverage spot. Some people are getting to Grant Williams a little bit, but do you see any potential like upside leverage plays here for the centers, or is it just a spot where we don't really need to get cute?
Um, yeah, I mean, I was looking kind of earlier at some GPP plays. Like, I guess like DeAndre Ayton probably be my favorite. You mentioned him earlier. Sub 7K. And a great matchup against Charlotte. I don't hate him in tournaments. And
Yeah.
then Domantas Sabonis at 14%. I think that game environment's really good. So I think I do like him in tournaments as well.
Yeah, and strangely, he's a little bit cheaper on FanDuel, where you can also play him at power forward, which I find to be unique.
Yeah, agreed. I mean,
And
it's
then,
nice, right? Yeah,
yeah,
power forward eligible.
and then we kind of mentioned Vooch a little bit, but like, do you like him at all tonight? Because we do have that power forward eligibility on DraftKings. Feels a little bit too cheap on DraftKings. He is getting 15% projected ownership, but 36 plus minutes in this game. Probably gets a slight bump and like maybe another rebound here or there if like Zion and or Ingram are out. Like, I don't know. Am I talking into that too much, or kind of what are your thoughts on Vooch?
I think out of like the top guys up here projected ownership, he's probably my least favorite. I just don't love the matchup here against
Yeah,
J Val. So I think he's probably gonna be lower down on my list. But
that's
one
fair.
more quick thing, we did just get news that Zion and Ingram are both active tonight, so they're both in.
Makes the slate much easier.
It does.
That's good. And that was I was gonna say that I was wondering if that was not the early game. It is the early game, so we're fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump back into some questions that we have here. So yes, we got everyone saying Ingram and Zion are in, which is awesome. Let's jump back up. Let's see. DeAndre Hunter tonight. That's a thought process we haven't really got into. We could, right?
Yeah.
Could play DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah, let's talk about him because when he came back, he kind of muddied minutes for Sadiq Bey.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think he's fine. What do you think about Hunter?
I think it's a great GPP play, not one I would want to go out of my way to play. I think it's like pretty clearly Murray, Bogdanovich, Johnson, like that. That'd be how I would rank them. And then Bay feels fine. Capella, I'm kind of okay with. And then yeah, I think Hunter's actually a good call out.
Yeah, I like that call.
I don't. What about? We didn't really mention this, but do you like Capella at all tonight? He is still not getting that much run. It's just getting the minutes to Bruno a little bit, and then Jalen Johnson. So I don't know. I feel like just looking at his projected minutes tonight, even at that price, it just makes me want to get to Johnson more, even though because he's not chalk. Like I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think the coach did come out and say like they're limiting Capella's minutes too, so it's a tough matchup and potentially limited minutes. So probably a no go for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we got a question: is Keontae George starting? So projected to start,
Yeah, he
but
should start.
yeah, they switched that up. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see them change the starting lineup at the same time. It would be. I don't know. We're just at a weird point in the season where stuff like that can happen randomly, but he should start.
Yeah, and the Jazz coach is so like annoying with starters too. We just saw him like change the starters like last game, so definitely monitor the
Exactly.
starting lineup.
Yes. So yeah, let's go ahead and kind of get into a first look build. Again, it's kind of a weird slate because there's a lot of like mid-range value out there, and the pricing is just somewhat soft, I would say. But are you comfortable just starting like with Wemby and Goga in a build, or do you want to go elsewhere?
Yeah, I love that start. Wemby and Goga probably my two favorite forward center plays. So yeah, love that.
No. And the thing is, like, I don't know, like because the chalk is somewhat spread out, like we're probably gonna end up on a chalky build, but
Hmm.
it might not be a build that gets duped too much because it is kind of top heavy, but also it's very spread out.
And we have like we mentioned, there's a ton of low end guys in terms of value we can get to. So
Hmm. Do you want to just play Hawkins, even though we got news that
yeah,
Ingram and that?
let's throw him
Yeah,
in there.
Yeah, that can be our kind of lower own play that gets us some leverage, and then we could probably go chalk. But I'm curious your thoughts. Do you like Keontae George, DeJounte Murray, Taylor Hendricks, Bogdanovich, Simons? Like, how would you be prioritizing this next?
I think I got to get DeJounte in there, man. 7.8K with no Trey. I know it's a tough matchup, but really good spot here for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I'll let you get the next one here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Trey Murphy. We mentioned him a bunch,
Okay.
but the thing is, like, he is at a weird price point. Like, this is a spot where if, and even when we're doing this build, like, and with Ingram and um, BI both active, maybe that hurts him a little bit, and maybe that's something the data will adjust to and we can adjust. But like, this would be a spot I'd be happy to get off of. But right now, as it sits, I'm fine putting him in there.
Yeah, I like it. The model agrees with you too, so I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from there, it does feel, I mean, that even feels like a toss up. We're already getting kind of unique there. Um, but like we could really go a bunch of places there, like Hendricks, Murray. We could go pure off the OF index. Like, could we fit Jokic in there potentially? We got Fox still ranking out pretty well OF index wise. Simons. I mean, there's just a bunch of plays. Value wise, we mentioned a few good values as well with Portland and whatnot. It's pretty open. So I don't know. Do you have another play that you want to get to?
It's tough because I think there's two mid-range guys I really like, both Keontae and Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
So probably one of those two.
I honestly would maybe say both of them.
Okay.
Kind of
Yeah, I'm not.
eat the
I'm not
chalk
for it.
on it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Now let's just see. That's going to leave us with 9.3 left over for the forward spot, which does feel somewhat like a dead spot, honestly, in the lineup.
Yeah.
And so this kind of goes to my point about like Trey Murphy. Like, it looks like it's solid play on paper for sure, but like, is he a must play? Maybe not.
Yeah. I don't think he's a must, but he's still fine.
Hmm.
We could we can leave him in there. We could try to go. I don't know. Should we move off? Is there anyone you really want to move off?
It would be like Murphy. Like, I would rather get to
Okay.
Jalen Johnson for me personally.
Yeah, that's fine. We also have Franz too. We mentioned him at
Yeah.
75 as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's do that. And then we might even, for that example, we might be able to play Johnson, or is it a little bit too expensive? Yeah, a little bit too
A little bit
expensive.
too
But
much. Yeah.
we got Aiden. We could, I guess we couldn't play him in this build. Jeremy Grant, Jalen Williams.
I think someone mentioned Brandon Miller too. He's a low on play as well as 6.
Yeah, we could toss him in there. GPP upside.
Yeah.
But like, to my point, this has been my issue today. It's like, it's
No,
a solid build, but like at the same time, it's, you don't love it, but you don't hate it. That's
it's
just the
tough.
night we have.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like tonight's the night where it's like you have a ton of great plays, but it's like you don't feel great about it, which is weird. Usually,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's weird.
So we got a question about Keldon Johnson tonight, and I'll pull him up here. Definitely been annoying lately. He is projected to get 28 minutes, low on play, but definitely too cheap on DraftKings. Feels like a good GPP play, but what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's fine in tournaments. Seems cheap. Thing is, it's just the minutes. How many minutes are we going to get? It's Popovich. So yeah, risky, but fine in tournaments.
And that's the thing. We kind of mentioned that earlier with that game. There's already a bunch of forwards that people are paying up for. Might as well just play those guys.
Yeah, agreed.
So we got this question: Taylor Hendricks or Isaac? Feels like just eat the chalk with Hendricks. Like, if you're making that choice, but I don't know. It depends on the build. What are your thoughts on that?
I just think Hendricks has a way bigger ceiling in terms of like minutes. So I'm gonna say Hendricks.
Yeah, and I'm just comparing them. I mean, they're somewhat comparable when we like just looking at data wise, but Hendricks is still the better value.
I
And
agree.
then Jeremy Grant question. Yeah, Jeremy Grant feels like a good GPP play. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he was in that same range as of like Brandon Miller. So I definitely like him in tournaments. Sub 7K.
Yeah, and we got to remember Brogdon's out as well. Sharp is out,
Mhm.
like Scoot's out. So like the usage should be there. It's just whether or not he's hitting buckets, and
Yeah,
it's a good matchup. So,
great matchup here. So yeah, I like that call a lot in tournaments.
and then we got a question about Barnes, Harrison Barnes for the Kings. The Kings, it just feels like you could always play. It's kind of the rule I've mentioned. Like, you can play Monk, Keegan Murray, Herter, or Barnes in like a build, just one of them, and one of the, like, you're gonna get access to someone going off. It's just trying to get that right. It feels like a headache. But what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, man, it's really tough. Like Barnes had those 4 games earlier on this year where he looked like prime Harrison Barnes in like the early 2010s, but I don't know. On this slate, it seems too thin for me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering about this next. Is this a comment on our build? No. I was wondering, Mike, did we end up on 4 Atlanta players?
I think he's saying you should
Yeah.
play for Atlanta and one Orlando.
That's certainly interesting. I don't know if we need to do that because it is Orlando, and Orlando has been good defensively,
Yeah,
but you could. Like, I wouldn't say it's wrong. It's more unique.
I think it's fine. On paper, it's a better matchup for Orlando, like you mentioned against Atlanta. But I think 3 probably could get there for Atlanta. I don't know about 4.
Yeah. Did you catch the end of that Orlando game last night with
I
the
did not. No, I was not watching the games.
Well, I just saw the highlight. Like Banchero got an and one, like to hit the game winner, and it
Mhm.
looked like he traveled. But like I didn't watch. I was just wondering if you had watched the clip. But
He
it was
probably,
just it was a weird sequence.
he probably did travel. I heard he shot really, really bad from the field. So
Yeah, it was just a weird sequence. And so let's go. We got some more questions here. So Chris Murray value option, yes,
yeah,
it's fine.
yeah, he's fine.
Yeah. Any Orlando guards?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Suggs is fine. Cole Anthony had a really good game last game. I think they're fine in tournaments. I do love that call because guards against Atlanta are a thing.
Yeah.
So I like that call in tournaments.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get there with Orlando right now. Like we have all of them projected to get minutes except for Gary Harris in terms of their guards. So, if he was out, I would feel fine getting to Suggs or Cole Anthony. But, with Fultz bat, we see the minutes are just spread out. Like Suggs can definitely get there. Don't get me wrong. Um, he'd be the one for sure, but
Yeah,
feels thin.
yeah, it's tougher, man. When all 3 of these guys are active, it's tough to decipher them. So
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And then we'll end it with this question here. So thoughts and Batten, and you kind of already mentioned this one as well, but we'll get back into it. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I mentioned him earlier. I do like him as like a flyer in tournaments. His points, like points per game, have been up when Scoot's out. So I don't hate him. It's kind of him and Murray are kind of like low owned flyers in tournaments. I like.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to our point where you could do more of a studs and duds build and end up on some of that Portland value that's out there with Goga if you
Yep.
want to pay up for Jokic, Wemby, like that route's there.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great route in tournaments as well. I like that.
yeah. So we'll get into our closing thoughts here, and then we'll be out of here. So just want to remind you guys of the Discord chat that's going to be going live here shortly. Yeah, do you have any closing thoughts for tonight's slate? We don't really have too much injury news that we are waiting on. Really, just what is it, Paul George?
Yeah, I think it's just Paul George and Norman Powell, and then I think
Mhm.
other than that, we should be pretty good, which is shocking. We usually have a bunch of injury news to wait on, right?
Right? It's always like monitor this, monitor that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, should be a fun slate. Though I'm excited for this one.
I am as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. Appreciate everyone being in here. I believe it's going to be the same time tomorrow as it typically is. So being here again tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.